What's up, guys? Got an exciting one today. Every day that we get closer to WWDC and Apple's September launch, we learn more and more regarding these products. iOS 13 is probably the most exciting thing in your near future, and then of course the 2019 iPhones. So let's get into it, and I wanted to start with Mark Gurman's report regarding the 2019 iPhone lineup. So this is more of like a recap of everything that's going to happen and not going to happen, and I know you've heard it all before, but this is him basically bringing it all together for you. Now, first thing that Mark Gurman confirms is that we will not be seeing a major redesign of the iPhone this year. So that rounded edge design that we've kept since the iPhone 10 is here to stay, and we will not be seeing a refresh into that iPad boxy look, which I wish they would do, and hopefully with the 2020 iPhones, we have a little spurt of hope there. Otherwise, that's staying for the 2019 iPhones. Of course, most of the changes are happening with the lenses. Now, he does confirm by this mold leak here that the 2019 iPhone lineup will indeed be changing in the lens department. So on the back, you're going to look at it, and there's this huge, like almost monstrous cancer growing on the back of it, you can call. I like it. I'm not going to talk any smack about it. I really like it. I think it'll take a lot of learning, a lot of growing on you to actually appreciate this design, but there's very good reasons from an engineering standpoint why it has to be this way, and I'm sure Apple will explain that at their event. But we are getting that triple lens on the iPhone 11 and 11 Max and the iPhone 11R, which we don't know what it'll be called. Again, that's just my naming for it. We'll also have that dual lens with that squared off design. So that is here to stay, and Mark Gurman himself does confirm that. Now, the housings of the iPhone 11 and 11 Max will be about 0.5 millimeters thicker. We did hear about this earlier. The lens will be shrinking. So the lens itself will not protrude as much seemingly because the housing is growing to meet it. It's a little bit of an illusion, but it certainly will be true. The lens itself will not be as thick. The body will be 0.5 millimeters thicker. And that's a good thing. Thicker phones are definitely welcome on my end because it means you can get a bigger battery. It means that Apple has more room to put some features and other things inside of the iPhone instead of, just sacrificing things for a thinner frame, which doesn't make any sense. Now, he also goes into detail regarding those cameras and their functions. So on the 11 and 11 Max, he says that those cameras will be responsible for an ultra-wide frame, and as a result, you'll get increased zoom as well. Now, he does go into detail regarding the 11R, and he says that one will have just increased zoom. He doesn't mention that it will have an ultra-wide camera, where before we heard it might. So that's up for grabs. Apple might differentiate the lineup by not giving the 11R an ultra-wide, where you'll have to upgrade to the more expensive and lucrative option to get it. Now, Mark Gurman has confirmed that the Apple A13 Omega has begun the testing phase in April, and later this month, it might finally enter production, of course, through TSMC. They will be exclusively producing this chip this year. Next year, Apple's looking at other manufacturers, but TSMC is going to be handling this one. I'm so excited. This is going to be a great chip. And of course, on these chips this year, Apple has dedicated sections for different things, such as AI, VR processing, and so on, and Apple will be focusing on that, especially this year. Now, Mark Gurman says that Apple will have a new feature where you can actually remove and add people back into frames using the power of the Apple A13 Omega. That's just amazing. Like, you're going to be able to do so much that you couldn't last year just because of that improvement and surge in power from the Apple A13. I'm so excited. So there's definitely going to be a very big section of the A13 carved out for the image signal processor, and I'm very curious about what Apple's going to do, but so far we know they're doing a lot with the camera features. Mark Gurman confirms that you will be able to charge your AirPods 2 on the back of your iPhone 11, so that reverse wireless charging is happening, and it's going to start with AirPods 2. Eventually, we'll see AirPods 3, and that's supposed to happen late 2019, early 2020. We'll definitely get into that later, but right now, at least Apple's adding this. And Mark Gurman does confirm that Apple is extending its in-house chip design to both Macs and modems. So we did know about this, but it's good to hear it from a person that knows what he's talking about. Apple is certainly working on modems. There's no debate regarding that, and they are working on Mac chips as well. Eventually, they're going to transition away from Intel's chips and go straight into ARM. That's going to be a very, very interesting transition, kind of like the PowerPC days, but I'm sure they're going to trump Intel in every single way. Okay, now we actually have the entire color scheme for the iPhone 11R. Mac Takara has made it clear that Apple will be replacing two colors with two other colors. So the new arrivals are lavender and that green we've been hearing so much about. It's going to be a lime green, says Max Weinbach, so I'm tying that in there. But we're going to have that lime green, a very subtle lavender, and that's the color that I've missed on Apple's spectrum for the longest time. They don't have a purple, a very subtle kind of just a very lovely lilac purple almost on the iPhone side. So the entire lineup is going to be white, black, yellow, red, lavender, and that green. So we're replacing blue and coral with those two colors. Honestly, those are my favorite colors of the iPhone XR lineup, but maybe Apple realizes that and you just can't have everything that you want. And by the way, so I saw my render being reposted on r/iPhone and you guys like it without the lens. So I wanted to show that to you guys, what it looks like without the lens protrusion itself. And I honestly like it. It's weird. It looks a little alien, a little scary there, but it could work. And one day maybe the technology will get there, but we certainly are not there yet. With today's technology, there's just no avoiding a lens bump. Like that has to happen, but with a good case, which I hope to provide in the future, you guys will not notice that bump whatsoever, so it's a non-issue. Just people that want to complain will complain about it. The people that don't care and want better quality will get it. And the real molds for the 2019 iPhones now exist. Mark Gurman shared a picture of them, and case manufacturers now are creating cases based on a guess. Like it's a very well-educated guess, and as someone that's entering that market, you kind of have to make a bet. You're like, will this be the design that Apple's going with, and am I willing to bet this much money on creating a case and beating everyone else to market with it? So that exists right now. Just to let you know, case manufacturers are betting big on this being the actual design. So if you thought it would be anything else, you're probably wrong. Okay, and there's also this lens design by Philip Martin. I think it looks fantastic. It's really an alternate style that Apple could have went with. Just so you know, they chose this design because it was the best form and function all together in one. They didn't specifically go with it because they liked how it looked. It probably performed very nicely, so they ended up with this one. But this is an alternate design that Apple could have went in, and I like it a lot. So props to Philip Martin, very good design. And while we're on the topic of good design, from Apple iDesigner, here's the Iron Man phone. I really like this. When there's not much to do with phones anymore in design, you can adjust the colors, you can make them look cool, give them special editions like we saw in an Android before. Forgot which one it exactly was, but we did see an Iron Man design before. So I decided to make my own version with an arc reactor. And what do you guys think? Let me know. So we'll be experimenting more with little special editions here and there too. Okay, jumping into iOS 13, a French site, iPhone Soft, is saying they know the actual support lineup and some details regarding iOS 13. So this just doesn't make sense. The iPhone lineup, according to them, is getting chopped at the iPhone SE, but not the 6S. So the 6S and the iPhone SE are on par. In fact, the SE actually outperforms the 6S because it has less pixels to push. But Apple would be chopping out the SE and then the iPhone 6 Plus, 6, and the iPhone 5S. The 5S is completely understandable. I get the 6 and 6 Plus. They're honestly a little slow. They don't have enough RAM, so get rid of those. But the SE should stay by all means, because they also have an iPod Touch, the 6th generation, that's running the same hardware. So Apple would be essentially cutting that one out as a result, but we didn't hear the rumor that they'd be dumping that one. Last we heard, the 6S was getting dumped. So this is an improvement. But Apple, if you're listening, please keep the SE too. But hey, Apple knows best, and they're probably taking iOS in a direction of performance, which is what this site says. So Apple is upgrading the performance of iOS on certain devices, and according to them, you'll see a 40% increase in speed on certain devices. It's unclear which, but it's safe to assume probably the newer ones. They certainly have the processing power. And the site itself says, for the record, iOS 12 improved the speed already, so this would be building on top of that. And I like that. iOS is a constant evolution, and like Johnny Ive said a long time ago, they built the hardware for it, and now it's time for the software to catch up. That's why iOS 13 is going to be the biggest and best update to iOS ever. And the way it seems with the iOS 13 features we've heard of, Apple is giving us everything at once. They're making up for all that lost time, and I love it. Now the iPad support looks a little better. The iPhone support with the SE being dropped looks grim, but the iPad is just losing the iPad Mini 2 and the first generation iPad Air, which is not that big of a deal. They're still supporting so many iPads here. So safe to assume if you have a relatively newish iPad, you're getting the latest and greatest. And the way we see it on iPad is Apple likes to share the interface with all devices, the no home button support. Every iPad gets that. It would only be fair for the iPhone to get that as well, but at least the iPads get sort of the same UI. And Benjamin Geskin has posted the Apple Card, so they've begun arriving to Apple employees. He had to Photoshop his name in, as of course they can't share that information, but it looks good. There's an actual box for it, not box, more like the envelope for it, and the setup menu itself has leaked, so that'll be happening at WWDC. I'm sure Apple will have a concrete launch date then. And I wanted to clarify something. So I made a mistake in yesterday's video. I was looking for the W1 chip or H1 chip clone in the charging case, but that would have been found in the actual earbuds. So I opened those up and I found a chip very similar to the W1. It wasn't quite the same chip, But what a couple commenters pointed out is that there's a Mac ID going on, spoofing of Mac ID, and then it's connecting through the same means of Bluetooth connection. So apparently there's no actual W1 chip cloning that's going on, it's just the Mac ID address that's been fooled. And Apple has not updated that in iOS 12.3, which has released today, by the way. So if you guys haven't got on that, it is a fantastic update. I've been using it in the beta program for a while now, and I gotta say, it has made my iPhone better in every single way. Speed, consistently, less crashing. The HomePod support is so much better. So do yourselves a favor and update. If you want to learn more about the intricate little details, I'll leave the review videos down below. And last things I wanted to mention is the Apple One is headed to auction. This is one example of estimated around 70 existing in the world. And this is going to auction for a predicted price of about $630,000. This is a very significant part of Apple. This is where it all began, and wanted to tie this in. We actually rendered up the Apple graphics tablet. This is pre-Newton, the first official, I'd say, Apple iPad tablet, the graphics tablet here. Here it is next to the one you know and love, the Apple iPad. So that one was very cool. I love doing these retro projects, and that's just the latest one I wanted to share with you guys. It was huge. It was very unintuitive. Apple actually had to redo it into a second version because it had too much electromagnetic frequency. So they've had that issue since day one, and the FCC just wouldn't let them be back then, and they didn't with the AirPower. So it's funny how there's those parallels, in time parallels, but there it is for your viewing enjoyment. Okay guys, there it is, the latest on Apple. Do yourselves a favor and update to 12.3 right now. Otherwise, I'll share more with you as it develops. Peace.